Hello everyone, welcome to my channel.
I still remember the way my sister laughed that day. Sharp, cruel, echoing off the lawyer's walls like a victory bell. Dad had just passed, and I was the one who sat by his bedside for months, feeding him soup, holding his hand when he couldn't breathe. Madison never showed up. She was too busy hosting parties, too busy being important. When the will was read, she got his company the empire he'd spent a lifetime building. And me? I got an old, run-down farm miles from anywhere. She turned to me and whispered, "Guess Dad finally saw your worth." Then she laughed. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. Because deep down, I saw the lawyer hesitate before opening a second envelope. And when he did, the color drained from her face. That was the moment everything changed and justice began. The sound of Madison's laughter still rang in my ears long after we'd left the lawyer's office. It wasn't just laughter, it was victory, cruelty, and years of resentment poured into one moment. I drove home in silence, the night swallowing the road ahead, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. Denver's city lights faded in the rearview mirror, giving way to the dark outline of the mountains. Snow had begun to fall, soft and silent, the kind that coats everything in stillness. I rolled down the window just a little, letting the cold air sting my face. It felt cleaner than the suffocating air inside that office, the air filled with my sister's perfume and her smug smile. Dad's death hadn't even settled, and already Madison had turned it into a coronation. She got the company, I got the farm. That sentence repeated in my head like a cruel mantra. But what hurt most wasn't the money or the business. It was the way she'd looked at me like I was small, pitiful, disposable. Growing up, we couldn't have been more different. Madison had inherited Dad's charm and ambition. She was bold, confident, and always the center of attention. When she spoke, people listened not because of what she said, but because of who she was. She'd been groomed to lead Thompson Industrial since she was 15, attending meetings in polished shoes while I stayed home, learning how to make Dad's favorite soup and helping Mom tend to the garden. When Mom passed away, Madison didn't come home. She sent flowers, expensive ones, but she didn't show up. Dad didn't say anything, but I saw how it broke him. After that, his health started to fail, and Madison became a voice on the phone instead of a presence at his side. So when he collapsed that winter, I was the one who took him to the hospital. I was the one who stayed up through the night, counting his breaths, holding his trembling hands when the pain got bad. Madison texted once, "Keep me posted." That was it. Dad used to smile weakly from his hospital bed and whisper, "You remind me of your mother, Chloe. You fix things no one else even notices are broken." I never knew how much that meant until now. When I got home that night after the will reading, I placed the dusty folder Graham had given me on the kitchen table, deed to Fremont County Farm. The paper was yellowed, folded and refolded 100 times, my father's handwriting still steady and precise. I sat staring at it for a long time, tracing his signature with my fingertips. Why would he leave me this place? Why not something easier, money, shares, anything else? Then I remembered the way the lawyer had looked at me before I left, a quick glance, almost knowing, like there was something I wasn't supposed to see yet. Outside, the snow kept falling. I wrapped my hands around a cup of tea, the steam fogging my glasses, and whispered, "If this is all you left me, Dad, I'll find out why." That night, I didn't sleep. I packed a small bag, grabbed the old truck keys, and watched the first light of dawn creep over the mountains. Somewhere beyond those peaks lay the farm everyone thought was worthless, but my father had never done anything without a reason, and I was about to find out what it was. The following morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. Madison. Madison. "Chloe, the lawyer needs us to finalize the paperwork. Don't be late this time." Me. "I wasn't late yesterday." Madison. "Well, try harder. It's not like you have anything else to do." Her voice through the speakerphone carried that familiar blend of condescension and confidence, like every word was meant to remind me where she thought I belonged. By the time I arrived at Graham Porter and Associates, she was already there, sitting elegantly in a black silk dress, her legs crossed, her manicured nails tapping the table. She didn't even look up when I entered. "Nice of you to join, little sister," she said with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. I took the seat beside her, trying to ignore the scent of her expensive perfume and the sound of her impatient sighs. Graham, the family lawyer, looked older than I remembered. Silver hair, thin glasses, eyes tired but kind. He adjusted his papers, cleared his throat, and began. According to the final will and testament of Mr. Walter Thompson, all shares and operational control of Thompson Industrial will be transferred to Madison Thompson. Madison's lips curled into a triumphant grin. Well, of course, she said softly, as if she had always known. Graham continued. To his younger daughter, Chloe Thompson, he leaves the family property in Fremont County, the Thompson farm and surrounding acres. Silence. Then a laugh, sharp, loud, cruel. Madison turned toward me, her diamond earrings catching the light. You? The farm? Oh, Chloe, that's adorable. Maybe you can grow carrots while I run the empire. Her words stung, but I stayed quiet. My hands clenched on my lap. Is that all? She asked Graham, smiling smugly. He hesitated just for a second, and that tiny pause was enough to change everything. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a smaller envelope, sealed with a red wax stamp. There's one more item, he said slowly. Your father left a letter, specifically to be opened only after the will was read. Madison frowned. Another letter? Why wasn't that mentioned before? Graham adjusted his glasses. Because it was his explicit instruction, and it concerns the Fremont property. Her laughter died instantly. He broke the seal, unfolded the letter, and began reading aloud. To my daughter Chloe, the land you inherit holds more than it seems. 10 years ago, I signed an agreement granting exploration rights to Silver Rock Mining Corporation. The farm sits atop a mineral reserve with significant value. I trust you'll know what to do when the time comes. Walter Thompson. Madison blinked, confusion giving way to disbelief. Wait, what did he just say? Graham looked up calmly. The property is worth a great deal, Miss Thompson. Possibly tens of millions. Her chair scraped against the floor as she stood, her face pale. That can't be true. Dad would have told me. I rose slowly, my heart pounding. Maybe he didn't trust you to listen. Madison's mouth opened, but no words came out. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time in my life, my sister, the one who'd always been untouchable, looked small. And for the first time, I felt like I was standing exactly where my father wanted me to be. Part 3, the second envelope, is approximately equal to 600 words. Madison stormed out of the office before Graham even finished folding the letter. The sharp click of her heels echoed down the hallway, followed by the slam of a glass door. For a moment, I just stood there, frozen. My hands were trembling not from fear, but from the weight of realization. Graham looked at me over his glasses. Your father was a man of foresight, Chloe. He planned this for years. I swallowed hard. You mean, he knew about the minerals all along? He nodded. He didn't want Madison to have it. He told me, she understands business, but she doesn't understand value. Those words hit me like a storm. Dad had always spoken through riddles, teaching lessons I never fully understood until they unfolded before me. I took the letter and read it again, tracing the lines of his handwriting. It was firm, confident, the same way he used to sign my report cards when I was little. The farm holds more than it seems. That simple sentence carried a lifetime of meaning. Mr. Porter, I said softly, what do I do now? He smiled faintly. You follow your father's instructions. Silver Rock Mining has been waiting years for this contract to mature. They'll contact you soon. Or, he hesitated. You can contact them first. Outside, snow had started to fall again. The streets of Denver glistened under the soft glow of winter sunlight. I stepped outside, clutching the envelope to my chest, as if it were made of glass. In that moment, I felt both rich and terrified. When I reached my truck, I saw Madison leaning against her car. Her arms were crossed, her face pale with fury. You think this changes anything? She snapped. You think Dad actually meant for you to run things? You're a joke, Chloe. Always have been. I took a deep breath. Maybe. But Dad trusted me. Not you, her eyes flashed. You'll ruin everything. I'll make sure of it. I didn't answer. I just got into the truck and shut the door. Her voice muffled behind the glass, replaced by the hum of the engine and the rush of blood in my ears. As I pulled onto the highway, my phone buzzed a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated before answering. "Miss Thompson?" A calm male voice said. "This is Daniel Brooks, representative of Silver Rock Mining Corporation. We were notified by Mr. Porter's office regarding your ownership of the Fremont property." My grip tightened on the wheel. "Yes, that's me," he continued. "We've been conducting exploration there for nearly a decade. The initial reports suggest the mineral deposit is extensive. We'd like to meet and discuss the transfer of mining rights as per your father's contract." I pulled over to the side of the road, heart pounding. "How much are we talking about?" $75 million upfront, he said matter-of-factly, plus an annual royalty of 10% of profits for the next 15 years. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. 75 million. I laughed, not out of joy, but disbelief. "Are you sure?" he chuckled softly. "Your father was a very wise man, Miss Thompson. He made sure his legacy would be in capable hands. Would you be available to meet this week?" "Yes," I said quietly, my voice barely steady. "Yes, I will." When the call ended, I sat there for a long time, watching the snow fall across the highway. All those years of being overlooked, dismissed, and pitied, they led to this. Dad hadn't left me the farm because he thought I was weak. He'd left it because he knew I'd protect it. As I started the engine and drove toward the mountains, I whispered to myself, "Thank you, Dad. I understand now." Behind me, Denver disappeared into the snow, and ahead of me, my father's secret waited beneath the frozen earth. 2 days later, I drove toward Fremont County, the road winding through endless pine trees and misty ridges. The air grew colder with each mile, and the world outside my truck window seemed untouched by time. This was where Dad had taken me once as a child. I remembered his voice echoing through the wind. "Someday, this land will mean something, Chloe." Back then, I'd thought he was just trying to make me feel special. The dirt road ended at a rusted gate that squeaked as I pushed it open. Before me stretched the Thompson farm, or what was left of it. The fences leaned at odd angles, the barn roof sagged, and weeds had swallowed the old garden. Yet somehow, standing there, I felt peace. This was his last message to me. I walked toward the porch, brushing snow off the old sign, Thompson Ridge. The paint was chipped, but the letters still carried pride. Inside, dust danced in the sunlight that poured through the cracks in the windows. Every board creaked like it was remembering something. I found the kitchen table where Dad once carved our initials. I traced the faded WT plus CT with my fingers and smiled. "You always had a plan, didn't you?" I whispered. Later that afternoon, a black SUV pulled up the driveway. A tall man in a gray coat stepped out. Daniel Brooks, just like on the phone. His handshake was firm, his tone respectful. "Miss Thompson, thank you for meeting me here. I know this must be overwhelming." "That's an understatement," I said, trying to sound composed. He smiled. "Your father signed a mineral exploration contract with Silver Rock 10 years ago. Back then, it was just a theory, rare minerals buried under this property. But 2 years ago, our tests confirmed the presence of a high-yield deposit. It's one of the largest in the region." He opened his briefcase, revealing blueprints, geological maps, and a typed contract with legal seals. "If you choose to proceed," he continued, "Silver Rock will pay $75 million for exclusive mining rights, plus a 10% royalty on all extracted materials for 15 years. That alone could triple the value of your inheritance." I stared at the papers. They seemed unreal numbers, too large, too distant from the life I'd known. My fingers trembled as I signed my name beside my father's faded signature. Daniel closed the folder gently. "Your father once told me you were the soul of this family," he said quietly. "He trusted that you'd do the right thing." I looked up, surprised. "You met him?" "Once," Daniel said with a nostalgic smile. "He came here in person when he first signed the contract. Spent hours walking this land. He said it reminded him of your mother, simple, beautiful, and full of life." His words cracked something inside me. I turned toward the window, blinking away tears. "He never stopped loving her," I whispered. Daniel nodded. "And he never stopped believing in you." When he left, dusk had fallen. The sky burned orange and pink over the snow-covered hills. I stepped outside, listening to the quiet hum of the wind sweeping through the valley. Somewhere beneath my feet lay a fortune, but all I could feel was gratitude. I sat on the porch until the stars came out, the old farm glowing under moonlight. For years, I'd thought I was the forgotten daughter, but here, surrounded by the echoes of my father's faith, I realized I was the one he'd chosen all along. And this farm, everyone had mocked, was the proof. News travels fast in Denver, especially when it involves the Thompson name. Within weeks of Dad's funeral, headlines were calling Madison the youngest female CEO in Colorado's mining industry. Her face was everywhere: magazines, interviews, glossy covers showing her holding a champagne glass, pretending she'd built the empire she simply inherited. I didn't envy her. I pitied her. Because Dad's company wasn't a crown, it was a test. At first, everything looked perfect. Madison held lavish events, made bold statements about modernizing operations, and promised investors record growth. But beneath that shine, the cracks were already forming. She replaced half of Dad's senior engineers with her friends, people who looked great in photos but couldn't tell a drill from a detonator. Then came the reckless expansions, new projects in Nevada, Utah, and even overseas, all rushed, all underfunded. The board started to worry, but every time someone questioned her, she waved them off with a cold smile. "I know what I'm doing," she'd say. "This isn't Dad's old-fashioned company anymore." Meanwhile, I kept quiet, spending most of my time at the Fremont farm. Construction teams from Silver Rock had already started setting up equipment, and the royalties had begun flowing into my account. But I didn't use the money for luxuries. I used it to restore the land, rebuild the barns, and plant wildflowers where weeds had once grown. I wanted this place to breathe again. Some nights, I'd sit on the porch and watch the lights flicker from the mining site in the distance. The rhythmic hum of machinery became a kind of music proof that my father's vision was alive, even if his company wasn't. Then, one morning, I opened my phone to a news alert: Thompson Industrial under investigation for safety violations. The photo beneath the headline showed Madison pale, furious, surrounded by reporters. She was shouting something, her hair disheveled, her once perfect image crumbling. I sighed, a pit forming in my stomach. A week later, another headline appeared: stock value drops 40% overnight. Calls started flooding in from old employees. One of them, Dad's former project manager, told me, "She's ignoring everyone's warnings, Chloe. She fired half the site supervisors last week." The board's panicking. I didn't want to get involved. I told myself this wasn't my problem, that Dad had made his choice. But guilt crept in anyway. Then one afternoon, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. "Chloe?" The voice on the other end was shaky, small. For a moment, I didn't recognize it. "Madison?" she exhaled shakily. I didn't know who else to call. "What do you want?" I asked, though my chest tightened at her tone. "I'm drowning," she said softly. "Everything's collapsing. Investors are threatening lawsuits. The banks won't take my calls. I don't know what to do." I closed my eyes. Images flashed in my mind: her laughter in the lawyer's office, the way she'd mocked me for getting the farm. "You think I can fix this for you?" I asked quietly. "No," she whispered. "I think Dad would have known what to do. And you're the only one who really understood him." Her words stunned me. I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the mountains outside the window, the same ones Dad used to call the spine of the family. After a long silence, I said, "Meet me tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., at the old boardroom." She breathed out in relief. "Thank you." I hung up, heart pounding. For the first time since Dad's death, the two of us were going to stand face to face, not as sisters fighting for inheritance, but as two women trying to hold on to what was left of his legacy. But I had no idea just how far Madison had already fallen. The next morning, Denver's sky was the color of cold steel. I hadn't been back to the Thompson Industrial headquarters since Dad's funeral, and walking through those glass doors again felt like stepping into a ghost's house. The walls were lined with framed magazine covers of my father, the miner who moved mountains, Colorado's iron visionary. His stern yet kind eyes seemed to follow me as I made my way to the boardroom. When I entered, Madison was already there. Her hair, once perfectly styled, was pulled into a messy knot. Her eyes were ringed with exhaustion, her tailored suit wrinkled. She didn't look like a CEO anymore, she looked like someone clinging to a collapsing empire. "Chloe," she said quietly. "Thank you for coming." I crossed my arms. "You said it was urgent." She exhaled and pushed a stack of reports across the table. "The company's on the verge of bankruptcy. 3 major investors have pulled out. 2 suppliers filed lawsuits. The banks froze our line of credit." I flipped through the papers. Numbers, red ink, unpaid invoices. It was worse than I'd imagined. "What happened to the emergency fund?" Her shoulders slumped. "I used it to buy out one of the board members who was trying to vote me out." I stared at her in disbelief. "You what?" Her voice cracked. "I was trying to protect the company, Chloe. Everything I did, it was to keep Dad's name alive." "No," I said, my tone low and sharp. "You did it to keep your pride alive." Madison's jaw tightened. "You've always thought you were better than me, haven't you? The quiet saint. The good daughter." I stepped closer, our eyes locking. "No, Madison, I never thought I was better. I just didn't forget what Dad taught us." She looked away, her voice trembling. "He trusted you more than me, didn't he? Even after all I did for him." I shook my head. "You didn't do anything for him. You showed up when it was convenient. You wanted his approval, not his lessons." Madison sank into a chair, her composure cracking. For the first time in years, I saw the frightened girl. She used to be the one who'd always been chasing perfection, terrified of failure. "Help me," she whispered. "Please, I'll do anything." The silence stretched between us. The hum of the ceiling lights filled the room, steady and cold. Finally, I sighed. "All right, but if I'm going to help, it's on my terms." She nodded eagerly. "Anything. Just tell me what to do." That's how it began. For the next few weeks, I practically lived in that office, reviewing contracts, auditing finances, calling old employees who had quit under Madison's leadership. I rehired the veterans Dad had trusted, the engineers who understood both the machines and the people running them. We worked 16-hour days. Madison sat across from me, buried in spreadsheets, swallowing her pride. Every night she'd look up, eyes tired, and ask softly, "Are we going to make it?" And every night I'd say, "If we remember who we are." But not everyone welcomed me back. Some of Madison's loyalists whispered that I was trying to steal the company from her. Others said I was Dad's secret favorite. I ignored them. I wasn't here for revenge. I was here to save what he built. One evening, I found Madison sitting alone in Dad's old office. The lamp cast a golden glow over the desk, the same desk where he used to sign contracts and write Christmas cards to every employee. She held one of his old pens, running her fingers over the engraved letters. "WT. He used to sit here for hours," she murmured. "I never understood how he did it, how he kept calm when everything fell apart." I walked closer, leaning against the doorway. "He didn't stay calm. He just never let anyone see him break." She looked up at me, eyes glistening. "Do you think he'd be proud of me?" I hesitated, then answered honestly. "Not of what you did, but maybe of what you're trying to do now." Her lips trembled, but she nodded. "Then I'll keep trying." For the first time, I believed her. Weeks turned into months. Slowly, the numbers began to shift from red to black. Projects stabilized. A few investors returned. Even the media began whispering about a surprising turnaround at Thompson Industrial. But one night, during a late meeting, Madison slammed her hands on the table, her old fire flaring. "Don't act like this is all you're doing," she snapped. "You wouldn't even be here if I hadn't asked for help." I stared at her. "You're right, you asked and I came. But I didn't do this for you, I did it for him." She fell silent. Her gaze drifted to the portrait of our father hanging on the wall, stern, steady, watching us like a silent judge. The room felt colder suddenly. I took a deep breath. "Madison, you need to understand something. This company doesn't belong to you or me. It belongs to what Dad believed in: honesty, hard work, integrity. If you can't honor that, nothing else matters." Her voice softened. "And if I can, then maybe," I said quietly, "we'll finally be on the same side." For the first time, she smiled. Small, fragile, but real. You sound just like him. I smiled back faintly. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. That night, as I left the building, I glanced back at the glowing Thompson Industrial sign. Snow was falling again, just like the day the will was read. But this time, I didn't feel small or forgotten. I felt like my father was walking beside me, invisible, steady, proud. And though I didn't know it yet, this fragile peace between my sister and me was only temporary. Because in saving the company, I'd also awakened something in her, a fear of losing control. And that fear was about to destroy everything all over again. The months that followed were a blur of long days and sleepless nights. The company, once gasping for air, began to breathe again. For the first time in years, Thompson Industrial posted a profit. Our workers, those who hadn't quit, were smiling again, showing up early, proud to wear the name Thompson on their badges. Madison and I stood side by side during the press conference, announcing the turnaround. Cameras flashed, microphones filled the air, and for a moment, everything felt right. "How does it feel to bring your father's legacy back from the brink?" a reporter asked. Madison smiled, the kind of smile she hadn't worn since we were kids. "It feels like home again," she said. Then she turned slightly toward me. "And I couldn't have done it without my sister." Her voice was steady, sincere. It caught me off guard. I looked at her, really looked at her, this woman who had once been nothing but pride and defiance, and saw, for the first time, something soft in her eyes. After the conference, she joined me outside. The evening light glowed against the glass towers of downtown Denver. "You know," she said, leaning against the railing, "when Dad died, I thought I had to prove I was just like him. And now?" I asked. She gave a small laugh. "Now I realize I should have tried to be more like you." I didn't know what to say. For a moment, the only sound was the wind. Then she whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." Those words, they meant more than any apology. With the company back on its feet, I turned my attention to something else, the money from Silver Rock. The royalties had grown faster than I'd expected, but I couldn't bring myself to treat it as mine. Every time I thought of spending it on myself, I saw Dad's face, heard his voice saying, "Use what you have to make something better." So I did. I created the Walter Thompson Foundation, a scholarship fund for students from mining towns across Colorado, kids who, like Dad once was, had dreams bigger than their circumstances. The first batch of recipients came to meet me in person. They were bright-eyed, nervous, full of hope. One young man said, "Ma'am, I want to study engineering, like your father." I smiled, blinking back tears. "Then promise me something," I told him. "When you build something great one day, build it with integrity." End quote. Madison visited the farm not long after. The barn had been rebuilt, the fields alive with green again. We walked side by side through the quiet paths. She paused, looking around. "You turned this place into something beautiful," she said softly. I shrugged. "It was always beautiful. It just needed someone to care again." She nodded slowly. "Dad would have been proud of you, Chloe." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The wind rustled through the pines, carrying the scent of earth and wood, the same scent that had filled my childhood. I looked at her and said, "He'd be proud of both of us." Madison smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. "Maybe one day, I'll believe that." That evening, as the sun dipped behind the Rockies, I sat on the porch and watched the light fade over the hills. For the first time in years, peace settled inside me. The company was safe, the land alive again, and my sister was finally learning humility. But deep down, I felt something else stirring, a sense that Dad's lessons weren't finished yet. I didn't know that in his study, locked away behind old files and dust-covered ledgers, one final letter waited for me, a letter that would change how I saw everything he'd done. It was a gray Sunday morning when I found it. I had gone back to Dad's old study to pack away his remaining things, papers, photos, his favorite books with margins filled with notes. The house had been cleaned countless times since his passing, yet somehow the air still carried his scent, faint tobacco and pine wood. As I pulled out the last drawer of his desk, an envelope slid out and landed on the floor. It was brown, sealed, and neatly labeled in his handwriting, "To Chloe when you're ready." My breath caught. I sat down slowly, running my fingers over the faded ink before I broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded carefully. My hands trembled as I opened it and began to read. "My dear Chloe, by the time you find this, I'll be gone, and perhaps you'll still wonder why I divided things the way I did. I gave Madison the business because she needed to learn humility to understand that leadership without compassion is hollow. I gave you the farm because you already possessed what money cannot buy: patience, integrity, and a heart that sees worth where others see waste. The land, like people, hides its treasures beneath rough soil. Only those willing to dig with care will ever find them. If one day the company falls into your hands, remember, build with honor, lead with kindness, and never forget wealth can be lost, but honor must be preserved. Love always, Dad." By the time I reached the end, tears blurred the ink. I pressed the letter to my chest and closed my eyes. Every word felt like a hand on my shoulder, steadying me the way he used to when I was small. For so long, I'd thought he'd overlooked me, given me scraps while Madison inherited his empire. But now I saw it clearly. He hadn't been testing my strength. He'd been trusting it. That night, I drove back to the farm. The sky was streaked with orange and violet, the wind carrying the soft hum of distant machinery from the Silver Rock site. Standing on the porch, I unfolded the letter once more, reading it aloud to the mountains as if my voice could reach him. "Wealth can be lost, but honor must be preserved." The words echoed in the valley like a prayer. A week later, I had those same words engraved on a bronze plaque and placed it at the front entrance of Thompson Industrial. Every employee who walked through those doors would see it not as a motto, but as a reminder of what truly mattered. At the dedication ceremony, Madison stood beside me, quiet and composed. When the cameras turned away, she leaned in and whispered, "He always believed in you. I see that now." I smiled softly. He believed in both of us. We just had to take different roads to understand it. She nodded, tears gathering in her eyes, but she didn't speak again. Later that evening, I returned home to the farm. The fields were golden under the fading sun, the air filled with the scent of pine and earth. I brewed a cup of tea, sat on the porch, and let the cool wind brush against my face. I thought of Dad, of the years I spent caring for him, the quiet mornings by his bedside, the last squeeze of his hand before he left. And I thought of Madison, proud, wounded, learning slowly what love truly meant. I realized then that my inheritance had never been the land, the money, or even the company. It was his faith, the unshakable belief that goodness always finds its way home. As twilight fell over Thompson Ridge, I whispered to the stars, "I understand now, Dad." And in the hush of the night, I swear I heard his voice on the wind, warm, steady, and proud, whispering back, "You've done well, Chloe.